we actually don't really have any real DC news. Well, I guess there's a trailer, but
I have two important pieces of DC news.
Which, funnily enough, let me finish my sentence. Funnily enough, the trailer that came out, the Suicide Squad trailer, I've still not watched, so I really can't comment on it. But
bro,
what the hell is wrong with you? It's so good. Do you not want to see Stallone as King Shark?
I'm not saying it isn't good. I'm not saying anything about it. I have not seen it.
But why would you not watch it immediately?
I was asleep.
Guys,
for 2 days?
DC podcast.
And then I was doing other stuff. I was busy, and then I kind of forgot about it. And then
Do you want to go watch it now? Me and Matt will just chat amongst ourselves.
I'm good. I'll speculate. I'll just assume. I'll assume it was good because it's.
I was gonna say what made me think about that self-control issue, Connor, was Margot Robbie as Harley. I'm pretty sure I could say I'm a Harley Quinn fan now.
She's really good.
She's very good. Between her and Kaylee Cuoco on the cartoon, and then all the stuff Tynan's doing with her in the comic, I can't deny it any longer. You know.
No. I do it on the trailer itself. I think it's a very strong trailer. I think it has it has some heart in there as well. Like already, okay, I can see where the heart in this movie is going to be. But also looks like it's going to be plenty of action. And I'm surprised at how much I like the Peacemaker. I think his name is the character.
Yes.
You know, like, okay, yeah. But I'm like, because I don't really care. But I'm like, oh no, actually, I kind of feel like I like what this is doing in the group dynamic.
From based off the vibes on him, I feel like he's going to be the straight man. That's not quite like who's still capable of being funny, but it's not on purpose. You know, like everything he says is very sincere, but it's hilarious because of who he is. So, and him and Elba just bouncing off of each other.
I think to compare it to the other gun team movie with Guardians, he's kind of the Drax, right?
Kinda, yeah. Which makes a lot of sense. They're both. They're both these big hulking dudes you wouldn't assume are hilarious, right?
It's like the deadpan comedy. Yeah.
But just the whole team dynamics. My wife says this feels like a Marvel movie, but she means it as a compliment because, we had just watched 4 hours of the Snyder Cut with very little...
with a lot more swearing than most Marvel movies by the sounds of it.
Well, yeah. But she just said the whole tone, this is what she kind of looks for, and especially in something like Suicide Squad, where
the word you're looking for is fun.
Yeah. So, but she was like, it felt like she goes, I want to see that. Like, I don't even know who half these characters are except for, Harley Quinn. She didn't even recognize Boomerang because she tries to forget the Ayer one. And not that I can blame her.
Lucky her.
But yeah. So, Joel Kinnaman's in there too. Just being Joel Kinnaman. Like, not much. Like, we talk about Peacemaker being that type of straight man, but Kinnaman is the 100%,
I think
regular dude.
I'm still a little disappointed Idris Elba's not playing Bronze Tiger. But sure, it'll be fine as Bloodsport.
It was he's playing someone called Bloodsport, which is weird.
Yeah. Apparently he's an older Superman villain. But I mean...
Yeah. But
I just like they have Ostrander in the trailer as well. Like, as an actor, he's got a little part in it.
Which is another thing, like, that Marvel had done well, because if you watch Winter Soldier, Ed Brubaker shows up in the background in a very similar way in that film. So,
and it seems like they're taking it seriously with the creators, because I think it was Patrick Zircher was tweeting saying, oh, hey, they're using my design for the Thinker. He goes, I bet I'm not mentioning the credits. Right. And Jim Lee popped into respond and was like, oh, don't worry, you're there. Like, so... it seems like they're actually taking it fairly seriously in that regard.
Even amongst the Snyder Cut creators are coming out and saying, like, it's cool when with Warner Brothers, since they own everything, right? Like, they're in control of that every little thing they do in these comic book movies, the person that created it does get a nice...
They get in the thank you list usually at the end.
Well, a thank you or money. Like, I forget who it was, but they said they'd use something for Superman. So in Man of Steel, and it wasn't Grant, but I know Grant Morrison got a pretty hefty one for his Man of Steel line from All Star.
Yeah, I imagine Wade got a bit as well.
Yeah, maybe it was Wade. I can't remember, but they said they were, it was nice that they thought of them.
I think as a rule, DC have been consistently better, at least over the last 20, 30 years or so at, okay, no, having these systems in place contractually that you do get credited and financial rewards when things are used.
Their history is very sketchy, and
that's why I specified the last 30 years or so. You can't go that far.
Yeah. So like, of course they're covering themselves. So,
yeah, I mean, do we have to bring up the creation of Batman? I mean, it's not exactly.
Right.
No, and I mean that was still relatively recently, right? That was fixed in terms of even just with the credits pages.
Yeah, that was like 60 plus 7, maybe even 70 plus years by the time it was done. I'd have to check the dates.
I think it's longer than that. But still, like credits. Like there, because I'm rereading Morrison's Batman in the omnibuses, and even as far where I'm up to, still doesn't have it credits.
Bob Kane,
I know.
right?
Oh yeah, I know. It was more recent than that. That's not a dispute.
Yeah.
I said 70 plus years. Batman only just turned 80, like, what, 2 years ago?
That's true. But, you know what? You said 60, 70, so I thought it was 60 to 70. I was like, it's got to be longer.
But the trailer for Suicide Squad, though, very, very solid. It's what you would expect for James Gunn. King Shark. I mean, come on.
He is a shark, and I can't wait to have Stallone singing the King Shark song.
Yep.
Because it's got to happen, right?
Yes, you would think. It's going to be hard to top Ron Funch as King Shark, but Stallone might give him a run for his money. So
I think he has the absurdity appeal of like, well, that's unexpected.
Yeah. Well, someone's like, okay, we got to get Schwarzenegger in there somewhere. I mean, he already has one DC role.
We still don't know who Taika's playing.
Right.
Just again, I mean, is it spoilers for a trailer? But just in case you're completely blind, spoilers for the end of the trailer. Starro is there. It's kind of great at the end where it's just, there's a giant Starro wandering around. Like, this is absurd, and I absolutely love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. It's gonna be good. I have a feeling.
I hope it is. I hope I like a DC movie for the first time since Shazam, I guess. But
yeah, that's because Birds of Prey was great, so I'm happy still.
Yeah, me too. I think I want to rewatch it. Watching this with her as Harley, I was like, she was very good in Birds. Yeah. I should give it a rewatch.
You should. It holds up.
Yeah, can I mention that I've not liked a DC movie without Connor having to tell me about Birds of Prey? It's tiring. You're just making me hate it more. You're making me actively hate the movie more than I ever did.
I was on the Aquaman review.
Oh shit, that's right, it was Shazam. Shit.
Yeah, which Shazam was late on.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Aquaman was the last one I saw in the cinemas before Birds of Prey, though. So, a little while.
Gotcha.
Yes. Okay, so something that's not directly DC news, but I do think it's worth mentioning because it kind of follows up from DC news from last year, which is that Marvel are leaving Diamond. So, remember last year when some stores would boycott DC, or when people said DC was ruining the comics industry, this was a terrible move, and yada, yada, yada. Are they all boycotting Marvel now too? Is that what's happening?
So the story is they're going to Penguin Random House.
Yes.
Specifically only for their single issues, not for their graphic novels. That's a separate thing I'll get to in a minute, but it's an interesting little caveat to that. There are some key differences, though, between this and DC's move that I think I can understand why some retailers might have been more annoyed at the DC move than this, because for one, you can still order these through Diamond. You can still use Diamond. Diamond will just act as a wholesale retailer and buy. Diamond will still buy in from Penguin, but you can still place your order through Diamond with everything else if you wanted to. So in that regard, stores don't have to change anything if they don't want to. But the benefits are that, from what I gather, that was definitely not the case with DC. Is Penguin Random House don't charge for the freight shipping, so it will actually be significantly cheaper for them. Whereas when DC shifted to Luna as opposed to Diamond, for some stores the price actually went up because they still had to pay the shipping and they lost their Diamond discount. So I mean, I can see the reasons there, but the interesting thing about it that they're not doing their graphic novels with them because they're I completely forget which publisher's doing those now, but it's someone else. But the reason they're not shifting is because Penguin Random House have a deal with DC already for their graphic novels and such, and they have like a preferential treatment thing that so whatever deal they offer to Marvel has to be worse than whatever they offer to DC, like contractually. And Marvel are just like, no, we're not doing that because they can't get as good a deal. That's so interesting to me that you know companies like DC can put in clauses with publishers going, you can't give our competition the deals you're giving us.
That is a bit weird. That's all I've got, really. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand business. Like, I think I do because I'm not a sociopath, and business is very sociopathic, right? So that's why I've never liked it.
It's a little bit pet. It's you know, it's not obviously
Yeah.
it's not. This is not a 1-to-1, but it reminds me. The feeling it gives me is when I hear about how like actors' agents have it contractually obligated that the names in the poster have to be in a certain order, even though almost always means that they don't match the faces in the poster, which everyone always comments on, and they've never thought, oh, we should, you know, change this because it just confuses people. But whatever. Business deals be business deals, I guess. Ultimately, I mean, I don't think it really matters that much to us in the long run.
I think it'll be
really
interesting in the long run as to how this will have probably quite big ramifications down the line, because I can't see Diamond surviving too much longer. They're not going to be the big dogs anymore, because you know a bunch of smaller publishers already left to go to Luna with DC last year, right? They followed that along. Now Diamond have lost Marvel, so they've got, I think they've still got like Image Boom, IDW, and a couple other, you know, the mid-tier ones.
Yeah.
But is that going to be enough?
No, I know my shop, I mean, they get a little bit of everything, but I mean, DC and Marvel, like the back issues of DC and Marvel take up 2 whole walls, right? Because that's how much they're ordering.
I mean, I would be inclined to say probably, I'm ballparking here, 80% of everything most comic stores order will be Marvel and DC, and then that the rest will just be, you know, the other 20% will just be everything else.
I mean, even then, that might be a low ball on it.
It might be, yeah. I'm kind of playing it safe here because I don't want to put figures out there with no context.
I would not be surprised if some stores were over 90% Marvel and DC, and then less than 10% everything else. That wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, it's a too big. I mean, it would be like if like a computer processor manufacturer. It'd be like if both. I mean, admittedly, this is a weird comparison because PCs you can just put whatever you want in it. But it'd be, let's say PC was just a company like Mac, like Apple were, right? It'd be like if PCs and Macs both said, no, we're just exclusively going with AMD now. So Intel's just left. Nintendo, please, please, right. Nintendo, don't leave us, Nintendo. Yeah. But that's basically the comparison. It's like you're losing the 2 biggest.
I love how your comparison to kind of make this more digestible was probably even nerdier. Probably, but it's the thing that. I mean, I don't know. Okay, it's like if every. It's like if every restaurant in the world decided to just go with Coke instead of Pepsi, I guess, and Pepsi's just sitting there going, "Oh,
then we're all winners." Wait, that means no more Baja Blast. Never mind. Actually,
that's kind of the opposite way around. To be honest, it's more like Pepsi and Coke are the ones that are the 2 big dogs. It's more like if I'm confusing myself now because I'm trying to think of more comparisons. I'm just going to stop right now. The point being is that it's very difficult for Diamond to remain as relevant. I mean, maybe they'll still be a wholesaler and that's just how they'll survive now, but I can't imagine they can remain as profitable as they were or as important as they were in that role. They're not going to have the grip on the industry that they once did, for sure. I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens for Free Comic Book Day in the future. I think this year will still be fine. I don't know if DC are even taking part. It's in August again this year, but Marvel aren't making this switch until October anyway. Okay. So they'll have no impact on this year's stuff, but who knows for next year? Especially if they shift it back to May, it might be, oh, well, this is all of a sudden. Yeah, that's weird. But hey, yeah. So you said some DC news you wanted to talk about? I've got 2 actual pieces of news
that that are interesting. The first one is Pete's favorite topic: Milestone Comics. The new Static Shock series that was supposed to be launching in April has been delayed until June 15th. It's supposed to be April 11th. Now, the reason for this delay is actually interesting because this was all these milestone titles, as 3 of them launching, were all going to be the digital exclusive titles.
Right.
They are no longer. They are shifting to being print and digital release on the same day. Although I think they're coming to DC Infinite the same day as well as they launch, so you can get them on there for free still, essentially. And that's the reason that this one's being delayed, is that they need to give time for retailers to order their copies, essentially. Whereas the other ones weren't starting till June and August anyway, so those haven't needed to be delayed. They can just announce it and it's fine.
That's an interesting tactic.
I mean, it increases visibility, which is cool, right? Like,
I think if nothing else, getting everyone who's got a subscription, like them having the option of trying it for free if they're subscribed, is a good way of getting people to try a book that a lot of people may otherwise, because comic books keep getting more expensive. It's just hard to justify adding more to your pull list when you're not sure. But yeah, so it's a bit weird.
It is, and I have to say, it was Chris Conroy, who announced this via Twitter, actually. But he actually started his tweets with, "We heard you, brackets, especially you retailers." So it's clear who this information was really aimed at, but I think it's still useful for us all to know.
Yeah, it makes sense that retailers would want. I mean, they're looking at the diminishing numbers of books that DC are putting out, and they're worried that, hey, look, so much of your stuff is starting to become digital first, if not digital only. So I guess it makes sense for them to want to speak up about that. We'll see. We'll see. First of all, I wish we still get comic sales figures, because they've kind of disappeared with the move away from Diamond.
Diamond haven't published any figures all year yet, at all. And obviously, once they lose Marvel, what are they going to do?
Yeah, but to finish what I was saying, it's not just that not only have we lost physical numbers, we still don't get digital numbers. So I would love to know, because I want to know the splits on these things. I want to know how well things are doing.
I think, bizarrely, the closest thing that we have to any sort of metric right now, which is not accurate because it has no figures attached to it whatsoever, but the only thing I can think of is Comixology's, like best-selling, hot this week, where they do order them in like, okay, what is best-selling right now? But I mean, it's not the same, is it?
It isn't the same, and it doesn't. I mean, obviously we get announcements or like reorders, like second printings, like Nightwing got announced issue 1, got a second printing. Like I just saw that on Twitter earlier today.
Probably sold fairly well. Yeah.
But the funny thing with that is, though, is we have no idea what the initial order was. So knowing something's getting a second printing just means it sold better than they thought. But if they only thought it was going to do 30,000 versus 100,000, then it doesn't really mean as much. And that's why it's not that uncommon to get third, fourth, and fifth printings, because presumably second printings are obviously much less, and then the third printing will be even less than that. So
yeah, exactly.
So it's a sign that it's doing better than they thought, but other than that, it doesn't tell us much.
No, it's the same thing with like that Comixology thing, where we can kind of compare book to book as to, that's doing better digitally than this book, but it doesn't tell us how much better, what they're actually selling.
I think
nothing useful, really.
For Comixology, I think you have to look at, maybe just like pick a time of the week and say, that's the time I'm going to look every week, just so that you're always comparing it with the same amount of days since the books came out. And
yeah, you probably want to do it on a Thursday or Friday. Give people a chance to pick up their books on the Wednesdays and Tuesdays, I suppose, now. But it's not the same.
It's not the same, no. But out of curiosity, just for experiment's sake, I've just clicked on Comixology, right? Hey, we record the same time every week, so this is as consistent a method as any. Obviously, it's a mix of Marvel and DC. So a DC book is number 1. Would anyone like to guess what number 1 on Comixology?
Is it a book from this week?
It is, yes.
Detective Comics.
It is Detective Comics 1034. And then Marvel's Excalibur number 19 is number 2. Then Amazing Spider-Man 62. And then number 4 is The New Alien number 1. Number 5 is Action Comics 1029. And then Cable number 9 at number 6. 7 is Batman Superman 16. 8 is Once and Future 17. 9 is Star Wars Dr. Aphra issue 8. And then number 10 is Guardians of the Galaxy. And it's the title's too long, it won't tell me. I'll need to click on it. Issue 12.
Okay.
So they all
there's
look
anything
new books.
massively surprising in that list, right?
I mean, DC had like out of their main continuity books, they only had like 4 books, so it's nice to see that 3 of them made it onto the top 10. So
Yeah, 4.
I think so. It's just a 4 we were talking because the other stuff's all like alternate universe. Oh no, Harley's 5. Oh
yeah.
Oh, Harley didn't make the top 10.
That is actually a little bit surprising, if anything.
I don't know. Maybe Rosmo's art's got more of a reputation than this podcast
Maybe.
thinks.
Maybe it does.
But hey, worth mentioning, Teen Titans Academy almost scraped in at number 11. Harley is 12, 13, 14, 15, number 15. So
I'm surprised it's below Teen Titans Academy though.
who knows?
Yeah.
But hey. Yeah, maybe we'll make that a thing. Maybe that'll be like a nice way to start the show each week, is just to check the top 10 comics.
Damn it! Did I just give him a reason to do sales figures every week?
Hey, it's a consistent time. Now, it is worth mentioning that I'm looking at Comixology UK. The Comixology US list will differ slightly. So, and I could go to the .com one if people really want me to check the American one. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, but
It's probably a bigger market overall, so it's probably a more representative sample size.
I could go there. I don't mind going to the
You don't
US
need to do
one.
it now.
I won't. But yeah, for future's sake, maybe I'll look at the thing. Baby. So DC won the week, though. That's the important thing. Detective Comics was number 1. I think that's the most important detail out of that. All right, so Carl was talking about prices. So actually, before you start this, because I kind of weird going with this anyway, but so we noticed something in the solicits last week that was weird, but it looked like a mistake, which was one of the books further down the list looked like it was up $1, but it was the cardstock price, and the cover still said the previous price. And I do want to mention, it looks like Batman's gone up $1 in June. But
that one's not anymore. That one's been fixed.
Oh, that's been fixed, right? Because what I was going to say is that the cover did still say $4.99.
Yes.
So it's only Joker that's changing. Is that right?
It is, but yeah. So Joker, from issue 2 onwards, is going up to $5.99, and this is, I mean, solicited as 40 pages, but that's 30 pages of story. It's your 20 and your 10 backup, which is obviously quite expensive. This has been updated. The covers that we did see said $4.99. Those covers have been updated to say $5.99, and this is coming from the Lunar listings themselves. So this is pretty accurate.
I mean, to play a little bit of devil's advocate, and I'm not saying I like this, but on a pure mathematical argument, technically a 30-page story book should be $6. If we accept that a 20-page book is $4, then a 30-page book should be $6, because it's 50% more pages, right? I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying I want it.
I get where you're coming from with that, but also this is objectively just $1 higher than they've been charging us for years for no actual increase.
No, it is. And part of that you could just argue is inflation. I'm not defending it, but I'm saying there is at least a logic to the math side of things that says why it should cost this much. But that's not the point I'm making here. The real question I want to ask, though, is why specifically Joker and why only Joker right now? Because if it was Batman, right, let's say they were starting and saying, you know what, Batman's our most popular book, we can get away with charging an extra $1, and they'd probably be right, and they would go do it. But why is Joker the one that they're doing it with?
If I was going to hazard a guess, because again, this is completely unsubstantiated nonsense that might be coming out of my mouth here. Batman's too high profile, where there could be an immediate backlash. Whereas Joker, it's big enough that still people will probably buy it because Joker sells, but not so big that it's one of the core titles that everyone's already reading. It's like, I mean, you might have liked issue 1, which I think was only $4.99.
It was, which is why I think I'm wondering if there's something weird to do with this, and I don't even know what to suggest. Like why? Because it's to do it with issue 2 is really odd. I mean, I suppose there's the argument of they wanted issue 1 to be cheaper to lure people in, and then they're hooked, so then we can raise the price.
The image argument, essentially.
Yeah, but given given how we typically look at comic book prices, particularly from DC and Marvel, it tends to be the opposite. It tends to be issue 1 might be special, oversized, or whatever, and cost an extra $1, and then it goes down to the regular price. So it goes against what they normally do for a start. The fact that they're shoehorning it in, and not just shoehorning it into a later issue, they're sort of going back on previous solicits. They're going back and sort of retroactively shoehorning it in, which kind of feels like, and I'm not saying it is for sure, but it feels like for some reason they something about this is costing more, and they had to retroactively fix it to not lose too much money. I don't know what it possibly could be. I have no suggestions for why it would be more expensive to produce, but
the only thing I can even think of is that for whatever reason they're only doing cardstock covers, because that's been why they've typically been adding extra dollars recently. But I mean, we'll see what the digital price is, I guess.
No, the digital's
really,
up.
you have to pay for Gilliam March art.
All I can say is, I know some people enjoyed Joker issue 1, Pete included, I believe.
Yeah, it was good. It was better than Wonder Woman.
I wasn't here that week, but I think you liked it. Yeah. I would say is, if you're not in love with this book, don't buy the next couple of issues, because that's the only way that they're going to get the message. Is if people don't buy this when it goes up in price, they'll go, okay, we can't do this, and we won't put the price up. If this goes well and it sells on target or above target of what their expectations are, I can be fairly confident that by the end of the year they will be rolling this out to other books.
No, you're probably right. The problem is, though, does anyone have time to change their order on this one? On
Stores might not. No. But I think this still matters digitally, and especially for issues 3 and 4 onwards, they definitely have time to change those.
Because it always comes back to this with comics, with the physical books, is that you have this time period where you have to enact it. So it might actually look to them, oh, issue 2 still doing great, but it's because they kind of bamboozled everyone by changing it after the fact.
Which is why I think issue 3 onwards will be more important to make that statement, because stores have time to adjust those still.
Because even if it was announced in time for the stores to technically cancel their orders, I do wonder, like, is that enough time for all the people who have that on their pull list to find out, tell their stores, no, I don't want it now, and for the stores to cancel it? I mean,
almost certainly not.
Yeah, so. But I do wonder, is this like like grounds for retailers to say, hey, well, you put the price up and none of my customers who wanted it want it now, so I want to return this?
As a rule, DC are pretty good at returnability in circumstances where things change. So it is very possible that if they do have a lot of unsold copies and multiple retailers are complaining, DC will allow it. Because it says here that issue 2 is due out on the 13th of April. So that's in, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
So I assume they've already had the final order cut-offs as well.
Yeah. I don't think it's been too long ago, though. That feels... I think about a month tends to be about when the final order cut-off is, right?
3 or 4 weeks usually, yeah.
Because
right. Obviously they can put in their orders from when the solicits come up, but they can adjust them up until relatively late.
Yeah, if you're ever on Twitter and you see retailers talking about FOC, that's just final order cut off. That's when you have to make your order for them to... Because a lot of comic stores don't stock for the shelves. They only order what people are actually wanting to buy and say they want to buy.
My comic store has been kind of trying to make that point a bit more transparent, where they will show the stacks of, here's everything that arrived in our delivery today, and here's everything that's going on the shelf after we've taken off all the things that are pulled for pre-orders, or anyone who's asked for something. And even as someone who knows how much it's pre-order based, the difference is staggering. Like, it is, very bad. I'm in a relatively small store, don't get me wrong. Yeah. They don't order tons, but still, the percentage is huge.
It's been a number of years now since I've even been to check, but I remember it was a little bit different because the one option I had really was a chain store. And because it was a chain store, they did order a lot of shelf copies because they were a big company, so they theoretically just did it like any other stock because they could.
Right, they had a cushion.
Yeah, because I remember when the New 52 launch, I remember getting there being like enough they had copies and copies. They had stock to restock the piles of copies on the shelves.
To be fair, I would say even smaller stores probably did, and a huge thing like that where they thought, we want copies for people to...
True, but I mean, it wasn't just like a that first issue thing though. It was that just was the normal experience getting in there.
Yeah.
As whenever I went into Forbidden Planet in the UK, they just always have tons of shelf copies of everything. At least to a point. I'm not saying they couldn't run out, because they would maybe later in the week, but the idea of like getting there in comic day and there not being copies left of something was just unheard of. Like there was nothing to worry about.
It's interesting because in my experience, where I live, I have access to 2 chain stores and 1 independent store, and there were times I could go in on a Wednesday and all 3 stores would be out of stock of a book. Like, not a book that I knew I was, it wasn't on my pull, because I didn't know I was going to get it. I'd seen it on, a day before. I was like, well, see if anyone has that tomorrow. And nothing. And that's, even with 2 chains that are over ordering compared to the smaller one.
Yeah. So Joker's went up in price $1 bizarrely. So it's a $6 book starting with issue 2. So
it's an awful lot for a Commissioner Gordon story.
Yeah, well, and a Harper Row punchline story, just to be fair to it.
It's kind of it's a lot for any story, if I'm being honest. For 30 pages of content, it feels like I shouldn't be paying that for a lot of books.
Not for a lot, but here's the thing though. I think there's an easy dismissal here because it's Joker, and a lot of people don't want to support a Joker book anyway. But this is the thing. If let's say there was like a sequel to Doomsday Clock, right, and they were charging $6 for 30 pages an issue, we'd all be getting that book, and we wouldn't even really think twice about it.
You're talking Jeff Johns, Gary Frank.
Yeah, I know. But...
no, I don't think I would. I think if it, no, honestly, like
so, Connor just leaves the show. If all the prices go up, Connor's just gone.
Well,
that's what he's effectively saying.
I worry about this following suit at DC, and then that means I'm reading a lot less.
Right, I
already
can't
have to watch my budget.
Many books.
I mean, $6 for a comic.
It's already one thing where I'm like justifying like anthology books that are like 6 or whatever these anthology ones are. $8, I think they are. I don't know.
It depends on the book.
I think they're $8 because but they're like 3 issues worth. I can kind of justify it because I'm like, okay, well, I'm getting a lot of content for that in terms of my value. Whereas this here, if I'm getting not enough value for the amount that I'm paying, especially when something like DC Universe Infinite exists, and that's I think $8 a month. I'm like, I can't support that business practice at that point of like, no, I can't be gouged that much. It's just too much.
What I'm saying here, I'm not pointing out or debating anyone's choices. What I'm saying is that there is a layer of not hypocrisy. I don't want to call it hypocrisy, but there is a layer of there are certain books that everyone will cave on for this. Or at least most people. Carr's claiming he won't cave for any. But I think most people have books that they will cave on for a certain price. And once they've caved on some, there's almost no putting the cork back in the bottle once we're at that point.
Quite likely. And for me, it's like I can deal with it when it's like, a one-off issue. A first issue is overpriced or, oversized. I can kind of like, all right, I can live with it. It's not ideal, but I can live with it for an issue here or there. But if it was every book was this much, I mean, I would have to like half the amount of books I read just on budget if they all went up this much. The cynical
part of me is thinking that, well, what happens when they take away the backup stories? Does it go down $1 then to $4.99? And honestly, I think Marvel have already been kind of testing the waters with like standard books being $4.99. So we're kind of on the cusp of that reality in general.
That's still quite like it's not been that long realistically since we went up to $3.99. And in terms of keeping pace with inflation, especially, which is kind of the argument that's tended to be thrown out for this, that's way ahead of the pace of inflation.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird.
When I started getting books back in 2004, they were $1.99.
I mean, we are still within a decade of DC's holding the line at $2.99. Like that was only 10 years ago.
Yeah, and they put everything back to $2.99 at the start of Rebirth as well. So I mean, that was only 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know, the ongoing comic price problem is something that's ever going to be there, really. But we just have to play it by ear.
there is a cynical part of me though that thinks that DC are okay with this because it'll shift more people towards their online service where you just here's your flat fee, and I don't see how that's sustainable for them. But I mean, I do wonder if it's somewhere.
I mean, according to certain people,
that was particularly bad. That one.
That was rough.
Oh yeah, I love this POS computer.
Yes. What are you saying?
There are certain corners of the internet that keep claiming DC is going to be stopping production of all. Comics,
that's clearly been widely debunked by this point. I would like to think.
Yeah, but they still hang on to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't make ultimatums. Connor likes to say things, I won't do this if this, and I won't do that if that, and I'm not saying that to poke fun at him. I'm more just saying I don't really think in those terms. Whether or not I read Joker 2, like, it's kind of just going to come down to what's out that week, and do I feel like I'm not reading enough if I don't?
I was going to say the answer is probably not a lot, because right now there's not a lot anyway.
Yeah, there isn't. That's the weird thing about it, is that, you talk about reading less books, but we actually kind of are reading less books right now, bizarrely, anyway. The problem perhaps becomes when the line's back up to kind of full swing and the books are more expensive. That's when some potentially tough choices may have to be made. Comics kind of have a way, though, of like giving you enough that you don't want to read. I've never had too much of a trouble getting it down to what I consider to be a reasonable amount, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I definitely have. I'm pretty confident saying Matt's definitely been there as well. Yeah.
Very articulate, Matt, for the audio listeners.
Yeah, I just said It's I have a budget. I can't go over it. It's that simple.
You go over it every week. This fabled budget.
No, but there's your ideal budget, and then there's the reality budget.
Yeah.
Well, I can stretch an extra $2.
I mean, I have been buying trades because it's been smaller weeks, right?
Yes.
Like, it's fine. But like, stuff starts getting to $6. I'm not gonna be able to justify that.
I mean, just in like from my own part, I due to a lot of Marvel books going to $4.99, I have switched over to Marvel Unlimited for almost all of my. There are only like 2 or 3 Marvel books I read weekly now. Everything else I read on Marvel Unlimited, which is actually only 3 months behind now. Yeah, I guess they felt they had to compete with DC Universe switching to 6 months.
Yeah. Like I say, you know what? Charge double for it and make it day and date, and I'll happily get your service and never look back. Hell, charge triple for it. I don't care.
Don't give them ideas.
No,
I mean, right now though, it's still a great value. It's just you are 6 months behind, and for us, that's not ideal.
Yeah,
feasible.
If they do a premium version, which is $30 a month, but every new comic is day and date, that is less than what I spend in comics a month. That is a good deal.
Yeah,
true.
To me, that's perfectly fine. That's the premium you pay for getting them upon release.
I do wonder if that is. I mean, not to spin this into all different conversations, but maybe the future of those services is tiered systems of here's your basic and here's your premium to get them sooner.
I mean, this is completely subjective because I'm someone who reads digitally anyway. I realize people who read physical books just see nothing but doom and gloom when we start talking about this stuff. But for me, that model would be perfect and would save me money.
I mean, I did even just the other day. I think I recommended to one of our listeners that, hey, if you're having budget problems and you're having to cut back on your comics, I do recommend picking up DC Unlimited and Infinite and Marvel Unlimited, because for the prices they offer, yeah, you're a little bit behind, but you'll be able to read still a lot of stuff.
Well, everything.
For, like, the cost of like $2.
Yeah, you really read everything basically, if you want to.
Pretty much, yeah. There are very few exceptions. I think Marvel doesn't have the Conan stuff for whatever reason.
Okay,
that's weird.
There you go.
Yeah, I know it's weird,
mission, but yeah. So no, so I hope they do come day and date at some point. I mean, by all means, charge more for it if that's what's going to make it work.
Remember when day and date was a big thing in the New 52?
That was
around the time of Hold the Line at $2.99, wasn't it?
That was just selling digital comics. Yeah,
I know. Remember, I'm like
things have come a long way in the last decade. Like,
yeah,
astonishingly
10 years.
far.
Yeah, which is why I'd love to see those digital numbers.
Yeah, if only.
They keep saying they're not growing anymore, but I'd love to see what it is year to year.
I don't need to have like every month's breakdown like we used to, but I would love to know what digital are selling compared to what print books were.
Don't worry, the new Comicsology Weekly Top 10 segment is now part of the show, and we will.
Oh, thanks, Connor.
I'm really sorry about this. Truly. From the bottom of my non-existent soul, I am very sorry.
That means a whole lot of nothing.